Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I'm really happy to have Ed from Canadian Gold Corp on to tell the story of Canadian Gold Corp. I think that this is a real undiscovered gem of a company with an exceptional orogenic gold exploration story. And I wanted Ed Hubert to come on to tell us about it. Ed, thank you very much for joining us today.
Allan, it's a pleasure to be on your show today, and thank you very much for inviting me. I think the best way to start off with the Tartan Lake project is it is a former gold mine. And in the history of our sector, the best place to look for the future mines is in the shadow of the past mines. And with the current effort that's been taken to look at both the deep deposits, the exploration results that we've had over the last 3 or 4 years, and the continuity between the management team to pursue the deep deposits and not just follow what's at close to surface. I think that's what distinguishes us from some other projects in this zone. The other part I'd like to say, and I think it's really worth repeating, Manitoba has quite a legacy of mining. I think there's been 71 mines in the history of our province that actually got to being commissioned and operated. And in that district, 34 of them are within the Flin Flon Snow Lake Belt, which is only 2% of Manitoba's total surface area. Tartan Lake is in that camp.
Well, the reason that I originally started following the company, Ed, was when Rob McEwen got involved. He's your big shareholder in the company.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Rob, in his history, had the fortune of building Goldcorp from a small company into a huge success. And the real game changer, that is an orogenic gold system as well. And the real game changer was they had struggled in the mining at the top near surface part of it. And then they drilled deeper and they hit the bonanza zone, and the rest was history. And so I was very impressed when Rob came on board, because this is an orogenic gold system that I see a lot of parallels to the Red Lake mine.
Yes, and Manitoba does have a legacy with the Bassett camp and its connectivity to Red Lake, and some would even argue that some of what's happening up in the Flin Flon camp has some linkages to some of the gold runnings elsewhere in the province. So yes, we're very excited to have Rob McEwen behind us. He's our major shareholder, and not only does he bring financial support to it, brings a wealth of knowledge and experiences to how these systems work and how they can be unlocked and the true value come out.
And the other reason, because it's not just people to me, it's what the gold is looking like with the drilling, and in your case, in the underground workings. And when I initially looked at the project, I was really impressed with the dip and the continuity of the high grade inside of a halo. And it looked like it was all pointing to depth. And it had been limited to about, I think, 600 meters of drilling. And then, but there was some minimal drilling below that historically that was very high grade. And it's starting to look to me a bit like a wedge, that as you
Yes.
go deeper, it's getting wider. And your drilling by Canadian Gold Corp has shown that zone does continue with up to bonanza grade gold intersections.
What we've been doing with phase 1 and phase 2 of the most recent drill program is to actually go back where there was previous holes and go into those holes and apply directional drilling. So we come in at 600 meters and then we drill down to 1100 meters. So incrementally, we're only doing another 500 meters. But rather than going from surface, we're making use of what we already had in place there. And we're using mud motors to control the direction of those drills. And I think we're getting good results. And each one of those results has been shown in the most recent series of press releases. And you're quite correct. At depth, we're continuing to see this deposit, and there's continuity that it's not just something that's shallow, it follows a trend.
And what Ed is describing there is you put a mother hole down and then you change the angle of the hole. So instead of drilling 1,100-meter holes over and over again, you're drilling a 600-meter hole and then you're wedging off of that to get
Correct.
more expansion around that one mother hole.
Yeah, and we have the 3D models as to where we think the gold is, and using the wedges, we can actually get fairly specific as to if the model says that we expect that we're going to get gold showings here, through a series of wedges, we can actually go after those targets rather than, like you say, drill 1,100 meters from the surface. So in the long scheme of things, it's a more economic and strategic way of running your exploration.
And historically, that few holes that were drilled deeper hit quite spectacular results, thick intersections of high grade to bonanza grade. And then some of your holes have also done that.
Yes, that's correct. And I mean, I was very impressed when I first joined the company to take a look at some of the preliminary results, having over 4.5 meters at over 40 grams per ton. That's remarkable. That's remarkable. You just don't have that. And now what we're doing is we're looking at additional drilling in that region, and we want to understand what the structure is and what the shape of it is for downward development applications. So we're not just looking to have a series of, can we say, unsegmented holes. We want to tie it together, and then we'll be coming back to look at what is the best mining method we have. Right? Like I said earlier, this was the site of a former mine, so we have a ramp, we have a lot of infrastructure in place. How does it present with respect to our more current results, and what will the strategy be?
And you have permits, right?
It's a fully permitted operation. We have probably some of the lowest energy charges in the country. Right now, the average energy cost for Manitoba Hydro is around 4 cents per kilowatt hour. There's some very attractive incentive programs. Plus, we have a very competent Manitoba Geological Survey group that can provide additional technical information and support as we move forward. So we can actually benefit by the work the government has done. Plus, we have access to programs such as the New Mines Tax Holiday, the Manitoba Exploration Tax Credit Program, and other support systems. And needless to say, we're right on a road. We have infrastructure, and there's a rail system up there as well.
Wow, those are some points I want to talk about, but I'm a big junkie for these high grade gold systems, and in these orogenic gold systems, it's important to note that the biggest theory you're trying to prove is that system continues at depth. Now, because these kind of deposits are very nuggety, you could be 5 feet from a just phenomenal hit. But if you're in the 5 feet the wrong way, you could have just like a good hit. And so the big point is to keep that zone, you want to see that zone continue and be gold mineralized. And so that's what you guys have been able to do so far.
I mean, one of the keys to the success of this project is we have a phenomenal group that's done some very outstanding 3D geological modeling as to how this system flows. How does this orthogenic process work? And so I think we've got a good handle on the geological model. What makes this one a little more exciting, in my opinion, is directional drilling coupled with a good model and a good strategy ticks all the right boxes toward heading us towards success. And have we been spot on with the drilling? Very close. And that, like you say, you don't want to be off by 5 meters. So you want to have some control. And with the modern wedge program, wedging, the directional drilling, a mud motor, that sets us up for success.
In the modeling.
Yeah. And you have to validate the model to find out, are you hitting what you think you're hitting? And I would argue, yeah, we are.
And
And we have a, so
sorry.
pardon me. Yeah, we have a good model, and there's good groups involved that put it together.
Well, not only proving up the theory, in a high grade system, continuity is very important. Sometimes I think people can get too wrapped up on grade, when in reality, if you want an underground high grade mine, you have to have continuity. And the
Yeah.
quality of the project or the target is also predictability. If you're able to predict where to drill and then you get that continuity, these are the hallmarks of what leads toward finding something important. And so you guys are well on your way in that regard.
Yeah, and I think an important part to remember is when you're drilling, and this is a narrow vein gold system, you need to know the extremities as to where you're starting to pinch out and lose that focus toward the gold. So if you've got a good model and you've got good predictability for the drills, you can expect sometimes some of the drills are going to say, well, it's obviously we're losing ground here, but we're gaining it over here. And that ties it together. So it's a combination of having a very bright geological team, and we do have one, and we have a model that we live by, because it also adds information as to where we don't expect to have results and where we need to flesh out additional work to add to our mineral resource estimates. And in that case, it's not about just looking for mineral resources at surface or convenient ways. It's to how it ties together overall within a structure. Oh,
Oh, there you go.
sorry.
We got you back.
There.
No worries, Ed.
Yeah. So, so
As
it gives us guidance, is what I'm saying.
as you were describing that, it made me smile a little because you and I have both been in the diamond business. You with the
Yes.
diamonds and me in 25 years of exploration. And diamonds are the ultimate in nuggety effect. And so a lot of the principles that go into looking for those tiny little diamonds can also be applied to an orogenic gold system. And
Yes.
the method that you're talking about really reminds me about my days in diamond exploration.
Well, when I worked at De Beers, we didn't call them nuggety. We used to call them the specials. And you would expect to have so many carats of anywhere from half a carat to 3 carat stones. But your expectation is that you would always hope that you would have some of these 15 to 30 carat specials. And the terminology is different. Arguably, the geology might be different, but the principles are the same. You're looking for a nugget in gold, and in diamonds, you're looking for those specials.
Yeah, and so attacking this in a methodical way is very similar to what you do in diamonds. I mean, sometimes in diamonds, you're just basically going off diamond indicator minerals because the diamonds are so rare, are so small. Even a very big diamond is small. A
Yeah.
a tenth of or 20% of a gram is a 1 carat stone. So think about
Yeah.
that in a piece of rock way down there. And there are some similarities to nuggety orogenic gold systems. So I really got the impression that you got a great team there working with you, Ed, and that you guys are going about it in the methodical way that something like this really deserves.
Well, thank you. And they would appreciate hearing that, because our team has been doing exactly what you've described. They've taken a very methodical, reasoned approach to it, where they built a good model, they verified whether or not the model is working, and then they've added to it. So did we have some good information from the original Tartan Lake mine? Yes, we did. But geological models have changed, concepts have changed, and exploration techniques have changed. What characterizes this Tartan Lake project from the previous project is this is a summation of modern geology, new models, and better exploration technique harnessed to pick up on what was originally learnt in the 80s and bring it forward into the 2020s.
Well, I'm because of my diamond background and my mentoring by geologists that always told me watch for the gold distribution in a drill hole and where the
Yep.
relationship between those drill holes. And what really impressed me again is in the first 500 or 600 meters, you can definitely see a high grade core, and it's dipping quite nicely. It's got great continuity. And when I saw that, my first thing is keep going deeper. And especially when some of the historical holes had gone deeper, and found that high grade to bonanza grade and showed that the system is actually getting stronger as you get deeper. What I mean by that is the high grade bonanza is continuing, but you got some thicker intersections in there. It's not that narrow zone going down,
No.
getting bigger at depth. That's exciting.
Yeah. No, it truly is. And when I saw the original core and taking a look at some of the more modern core logging techniques where you're looking at 360-degree core logging, that speaks to what you're saying about how you try and use the information that you have from the core to help give you direction as to where the system goes. And yeah, it's having been involved in this sector now for over 20 years, seeing what we're doing today and seeing what they were doing 20 years ago is phenomenal. A lot of changes. And I still remember one of my mentors in exploration always told me, he said, it's new techniques, it's new technology, but the other part of it is make sure your geologists are well respected when they've been lucky. Serendipity plays a role.
Absolutely. We certainly need that in the business. So we've got into the guts of what really excites me about this project. I love orogenic gold systems. I love when you get that super bonanza to high grade gold. I like when you can follow that with continuity. I like it when it looks like it's getting bigger at depth. And so it has all the hallmarks of what I look for in an orogenic gold system. But earlier
Right.
you touched on
Yeah.
something that is also quite important in that when a new discovery is made, any kind of metal or any kind of deposit, then you can have a very long window in the development discount window of the Lassonde curve. You got to go through permitting and you got to do all this work to get it to be a mine. You guys have kind of got a situation that if everything goes the way it looks like it's going with the drilling, you could narrow that Lassonde curve development discount window quite dramatically.
Absolutely. I mean, the original environmental license that was used for the original Tartan Lake mine is still in effect. And I'm a former environment regulator, so I've been looking at the monitoring programs, what our water quality is. We're not just a question of being under the curve for what mine effluent is. In most instances, we're better than even the Canada drinking water standards for our tailings. So we're in very good shape for this mine. And the other part, I think it's worth repeating, there's some very good incentive programs in Manitoba, and I think we've sort of gone under the radar that people don't realize we have a better, in many instances, many of the programs that we have are better than Ontario or better than BC, like the Manitoba Exploration Tax Credit, where flow-through investors get a 30% top-up on top of the federal 100% flow-through offering.
So
We
it's
have
like
the new mines tax. It's a super flow through, and the way it's been set up, it's a very easy one to administer. And it was set up that people in industry and the investment community can really spell it out quickly to their investors. You don't need to hire a team of lawyers to walk you through it.
well,
And that's in place.
so that will help you with the exploration side of things in a big way.
On the development side, the new mines tax holiday is one of my favorites. Is the way that works is unlike anywhere else in the country, there is no deadline that if you get a new mine status, that it runs out in 5 years or 10 years. It runs out when the amount of your CapEx put into a project has met the amount of taxes avoidable that you would have had to paid. So if you've got a $400 million CapEx or $200 million CapEx, you don't start paying a tax until you have basically run up enough credits against mining taxes payable, and that's when it kicks in. So is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? It means to the investor, there's a better chance that you're going to get your money out and you're going to have a better return on investment. And that doesn't happen too often anywhere else in the country. There is new mine tax holidays, but most of them are fairly tight.
Right,
And on
that's quite
the
impressive.
last part,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
the last part that I'm really impressed with is Manitoba Hydro. We 98% of Manitoba Hydro is hydroelectric driven, so it's clean energy. And the rates that a mine would get would be approximately 4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a fraction of what a project would be charged in Ontario. Ventilation, pumps, mills, it's all driven by electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are where we have serviced electricity nearby to our site at very low cost, which is very remarkable. And for a northern project as well, not only do we have trucking nearby, which services the town of Flin Flon, we also have a rail system that goes right through up to Flin Flon. So if there's any equipment that needs to be brought in, we have access to rail.
Wow.
So there's a lot of remarkable infrastructure in place. And I think we're only something like 5 or 6 kilometers from the old former Trout Lake mine. And again, going back to the old parable, where do you find a mine? In the shadow of a former mine. And we have lots of shadows up there.
It's quite incredible. I mean, when you're sort of ticking off the boxes of what you would want in a project, you've done that with the drilling. And then
Yep.
you look at these other issues such as you got a permit.
Yep.
You've got the tax benefit that as you're spending CapEx, you get a tax holiday, which, and then you've got low power and infrastructure all around you. So what that describes is the ability to bring your capital, bring your cost of bringing something into production, if it is in fact a mine, can be much lower than many other jurisdictions, practically any other jurisdiction. And that will also impact your operating costs when you're in operation, if it goes in that direction. So, you've got all the boxes checked off there, Ed.
Yeah, and the one area that a lot of people lose sight on is that, and I'm hopeful eventually we're going to have this hard decision to make, a production decision. We're not there yet, and I want to be cautious that I shouldn't be making any forward-looking statements. But as an exploration president, I look at Manitoba in the Flin Flon area with interest because there's home to something called the Northern Manitoba Mine Academy. Not only is it a mine training school, it also has a modern, uh, well-maintained mine simulator that can simulate both a scoop tram, a rock truck, and it has the ability of additional modules as required, whether it's a jumbo, a twin jumbo, or if you wanted to have haulage trucks, you could also put in the modules and have that run. So that school is less than 30 kilometers from Tartan Lake.
And
And so looking again, ticking the boxes, there's a lot of very strong, compelling reasons to give this a good shot.
And you know, when you described that to me in our pre-interview call yesterday, it reminded me of conversations that I've had in interviews with Rob McEwen regarding his McEwen copper asset and how they're trying to build a mine of the future that will be an example for the direction of mining in the future. And what you're talking about there with that three simulation ability is you could go in there with maybe electric vehicles in the future that are all
Yes.
operated on the surface very safely and effectively, and using that kind of technology, and you've got the place to train the people, you know, 20, 30 miles away from the actual property.
Yeah. And you mentioned about diamonds and something that you and I both were involved with. The mine simulator and the mine academy that's up in Flin Flon is actually based on the experiences that were developed up in Northwest Territories with the Mine Training Society. And so the lessons learned as to how they were able to mobilize a young workforce and get them involved in mining after a lot of mines had closed was the simulators. And we've got a good one here in Flin Flon. And there's a good team that operate and train it. But it's a question that we didn't just invent something like this. It was borrowed from best practices and experiences from the diamond sector. So there has been some exchange of ideas between both sectors.
That in itself is really phenomenal to me, Ed, because I know I got into the mining business in 1993. At the time, I was 29, and
Right.
the people younger than me, very few. The people 10 to 12 years older than me, very few. And that was called it's escaping me, lost generation. And because it was a tough market in the 80s and the 90s. And so we had this lost generation. Then in 2001 to 2012, we had an improvement. The price of metals went up, the jobs got more, there was better opportunities. So there was an influx of people, not anything to the degree that could replace the lost generation, but it was an improvement. And then since 2012, we're kind of having a mini lost generation. And what this has created in the industry is a people problem. And so being
Yeah.
so close to Flin Flon, having such a well-trained workforce of mining people there, and having these facilities for them to learn how to mine in the future, this is not lost on me, Ed, because I clearly I've experienced the people problem in the mining business.
Yeah, and I mean the big mining operators in Manitoba, the Hudbay, the Valley, they all work with the University of Colleges of the North of Manitoba, which owns and operates the Northern Mine Academy. So they have experience both in the Red Seal trades, the equipment operators, and so we're not just taking a bit of a flyer and say, will it work? No, it's not a question of will it work. The existing mines are using this system. So we get the advantage once we get to a point where we can make some decisions knowing that there's proven background behind it.
Wow, that's quite tremendous. Now, let's get into a bit of the future. I know you got to be careful about your forward-looking statements, but at the Tartan mine, it was only in production for a couple years. If my memory serves me,
About 2.5, I think. Yeah, something like that.
back in 87, 89 window, somewhere in there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they had done a pretty significant network of underground workings to get at that material back then, correct?
That's correct.
So you have the benefit of a lot of underground working that is already been done ahead of you. So let's use an example and say that things keep going in the right direction with your drilling below those underground workings. It wouldn't take a lot of work to continue those underground workings.
No. And what makes me quite optimistic with it, and again, we have not made a production decision, and I have to be careful that we are exploration, and that's our front and center. But we're situated that we've got a ramp. It's not, our conveyance is not fixed to a shaft system. A ramp gives you a little bit more flexibility, and it's more adaptable to deposits and developments that may come out of this property. Whereas if you have a conventional mine shaft system, some of your degrees of freedom are a little bit more restricted. And I mean that by the way that you can run a drift from locations that your ramp will get to. Whereas with the shaft, you're going to have to bring equipment down the shaft to do the developmental work.
And then reach way out from it. Where with
Correct.
underground workings, you can focus where you want to go.
Yes.
Well, the reason,
oh,
sorry.
I was just going to say, the limits to the ramp. So it has to present itself to a potential ore body. And second of all, in terms of depth, you get to a certain trade-off point. You can't go too deep.
Okay. Well, the reason that I wanted to talk about that is, I'm a big follower of the Lassonde curve. And,
Yep.
there's the exciting exploration left side of the Lassonde curve when you have success. And I think you've got signs that you could, that's a possibility. But then after you get over the left side of the Lassonde curve, that development discount window can be very, very long. And having this is why I asked you these questions about what's been done in the past and the permits and the low cost of energy and all these issues, is that if everything were to go well on the exploration side, you have a ability to narrow that development discount window quite dramatically.
Yeah, and I think we're set up for success in terms of pursuit of discovery.
Right.
And that's step one to where we have to be. Are these other boxes ticked for the development side of Lassonde? Yes. But it's going to be a lot of work. We have to verify. We'll have to go out there and do the costing, find out what's required, and take on that age-old question: what is our cutoff grade?
Right.
And you need to have some engineering costs that you can base that on.
Well, you brought up a good point there, and getting back to the exploration, which is my heart and soul.
Yep.
As you're sort of guiding me in these questions, it became very apparent to me that you really understand you're an exploration company at this stage in the game, and your key asset
Yes.
is getting deeper underneath the old mine workings at Tartan. But before we go, there's also other targets that could come to the forefront in the not too distant future as well. Did I get that right, Ed?
That's absolutely correct. The Flin Flon Snow Lake Greenstone Belt is very prolific. And there's a series of I shouldn't say advanced exploration because that term has fallen out of favor. I would say there's a lot of very attractive exploration targets nearby. And that's something that we will take stock of. We want to talk to those firms and see if there are synergies with, if we are the firm to go forward, that could be processed.
Okay.
And I would say that there's probably at least 3 or 4 that I'm aware of that are very interesting.
On your project,
Yes.
right? Okay, okay.
And also nearby with other properties.
Ah,
And so it's a combination. There's properties that we have and there's properties nearby. And it's a question of how do the numbers look?
mhm. Because these kind of greenstone belts are not just, well, we know they're great for orogenic gold systems because you need that old rock. But being in the Flin Flon camp, we know that it's also fantastic for base metal deposits as well. And the leg up there is that you've got plenty of mining operations all around you.
Yeah, and the one part that I'm always like I've done a lot of time in government as well as industry, and I thought I had a very good handle on where all the mineral deposits were as well as where the former mines were. Might have a little bit of humble pie because on occasion recently, a few people have brought forward information about mines that were in the Flin Flon camp that don't show up in government records.
Yeah.
And part of it is pre-1930. If it was a mine, it would have been under the federal government because it was pre-Natural Resource Transfer Act. So there's always the opportunity there might be other deposits out there that we're not even aware of, or the sector isn't even that well aware of.
Well, again, it highlights the point that, you know, you really see yourself as an exploration company. You do have a leg up if you go into that development side, but you're really focused on the exploration, not just underneath
Correct.
Tartan mine, around your, on your property, around the Tartan mine, and then in the region as well.
Yeah, and I think my personal background, I mean, I helped do the developmental work for one diamond mine, 2 other gold projects. So I have been down that path where I provided service to help a firm move from exploration into production. And I have done it. I know what's involved, and I can provide that kind of insight for our company should we get to that point. And that's what I bring to the table. I played a role in Gaucho Koi. I played a role with uh,
Stout?
Golden Predator and a few other firms.
Okay. Well, after we had our pre-interview, I was had a conversation with Rob McEwen about the company. Periodically, we have a catch-up phone calls, and I told him why I was so impressed with what you guys have done, and especially the part that I really enjoy these kind of conversations, Ed, because oftentimes you put the information out there in the news releases and in your corporate presentations and whatnot.
Right.
But these conversations really help make that information come to life. And I told Rob that I was blown away with our conversation yesterday as a pre-interview. And I was
Well, thank you.
already impressed with the quality of the project. And I really appreciated talking to you yesterday and talking to you now, Ed, because I think Canadian Gold Corp has a good future ahead of it.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, Ed. Well, I'm going to close it up, and I do look forward to future interviews because I think this opportunity to talk about beyond the news releases and beyond the written information really helps bring the story to life. And I think you got a great story, Ed.
Okay, well, thank you. I look
I'm gonna-
forward to our next interview.
I'm gonna wrap it up and then we can have a chat at the other end.
Okay, cheers. Thanks.
Okay, there you go, folks.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm very impressed with the Canadian Gold Corp story. It started with talking to being aware of Rob McEwen getting so involved with the company. And then I looked at the data and I saw a really nice zone inside the Tartan Lake mine model. And I felt that it looked like it could continue deeper, and that has happened. And even not only has it gotten deeper, the high grade, it seems to expand at depth, and the intersections are very thick for high grade to bonanza grade targets or deposits. And so I've become more and more impressed, and having the conversation I did with Ed yesterday to talk about all of these other elements that are equally as important. They don't always get looked at, but in the grand scheme of things, they are crucial. And so the main focus, and I like this part, is going to be completely on the exploration. I think they've got a lot of drilling to do to see how that orogenic gold deposit continues at depth. And I like their chances of finding something special down there. And then they've got other targets around it that look good as well. So yeah, there you go. That's the story. And as always, do your homework. My shows are not for buying and selling recommendations. I'm purely for information purposes and trying to help you do your homework, and me as well. These conversations that I have with management of public companies really help me to be able to understand and then present the story to my audience. Again, do that homework, go to their website, check out their corporate presentation, you know, and talk to your financial advisors about your risk profile. But I would close it off by saying I'm a very big fan of high-grade orogenic gold systems. I've seen that where that can lead in places like Red Lake, Ontario, where Rob McEwen had all of his success, Fosterville, Newfound Gold, and other places in the world. And I think that Canadian Gold Corp has a very special project at their Tartan Lake project, and you should check it out. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.